Hello, I'm Chuck Adams. I had the opportunity and the good fortune to present at our new clubhouse here at the marina on March 18th on solar tips and tricks for boaters. And today I'll be doing a video presentation of the same content. Today's agenda is about myself, who I am and who I am not, some common questions that are asked, components of a solar system, how we size a system, some of the use cases that I think are most appropriate to the marina here, and then there'll be an additional video of a solar boat tour of my boat. Who I am? Well, I'm Chuck Adams, and I am a boater. Presumably, you're watching this video because you're a boater as well, and we all love lake life. I'm also a solar enthusiast, and that happens to be apropos for the situation that we're in right now because the marina is without power, and solar is one of the means that we might have available to us to be able to accommodate and continue to use some of our modern conveniences that we've gotten used to. Who I am not the only solar enthusiast in the marina. There's been a few individuals here that have pioneered solar long before there was a crisis in management and long before there was a crisis regarding the power. I'm hoping that everybody who has something to contribute regarding solar is willing to be a resource, not just myself, because as I said, I'm not the only solar enthusiast here. And I'm hoping that we'll do that for all kinds of topics, not just limited to solar power. Also, I am not a spokesperson for marina ownership or for the state, for the marina workers. I'm just Chuck Adams. I'm a me. And I do have opinions, and I will share those opinions, but those opinions don't necessarily reflect those of the state or of management. Some common questions that I get when people are talking to me about solar is, will I be able to run my air conditioner using solar, or will I be able to use my refrigerator using solar? And the answer is yes. Solar can provide power for all of these large appliances. The issue is whether or not you have enough resources, enough space to accommodate those needs. And hopefully this presentation will help you answer that question. The other question that I get is, what can I run with solar? And as we go through this presentation, we'll be answering that as well. Some general concepts about what you're able to do with solar. There are various components of a solar system that we need to talk about in order to understand the whole system. One is the inverter, the other is the batteries, and then we have our solar panels, and that's what most people attribute to a solar system is the solar panels. Then there's a charge controller, and of course a generator is always involved in systems that are off-grid systems as well, although we may have some challenges with running our generators here, but generators are always a good part of an off-grid solar system. Then we'll talk about pre-built solar generators, which happen to combine some of the components all in one unit. And then there are some solar accessories. The first part of a solar system that I like to talk about is the inverter, because that answers the first question, what can I run? Inverters change battery power into AC, or alternating current, the typical plug that you're used to plugging into. A lot of our boats have DC power, but they also have AC components as well, such as microwaves, coffee pots. And that's what an inverter will do, is change the power that's in your batteries to power that can be used to utilize those appliances. The size of the inverter determines what you can run, but not necessarily how long you can run it. That's the batteries, spoiler alert. Inverters are the equivalent to generators. So a 2000 watt inverter will do the same work that a Honda 2000 will do. And generators typically run on gas. Well, your inverter runs on battery power. I have here an example of a smaller inverter, a 750 watt inverter. And this is capable of running a lot of your smaller appliances, such as lights, television, those kinds of small things, maybe some phone chargers as well, your computer. That's what this inverter will run. But you'll need larger inverters in order to run larger appliances. The general rule of thumb I've got, without going into deep amounts of math, are that an inverter of around 1,000 watts or less will be able to run all of your smaller appliances, but won't be able to run anything large, such as a microwave or a coffee pot or the air conditioner. A 2,000 watt inverter will probably be able to run one significant appliance at a time and all your smaller appliances. It would not be able to run two major appliances at the same time. And a 3,000 watt inverter would be capable of running two major appliances at the same time, plus all of your smaller appliances. Question is, well, how do I know what I'll be able to run? How do I know what power is being drawn by my appliances? Well, there's Ohm's law, which is math and science, which is watts equals amps times volts. But that's not necessarily an easy way of determining how much power your systems use. I happen to have purchased a power usage monitor, and if you look online at Amazon, it's what's called on the screen here, electricity usage monitor, a Bridia, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, the power consumption wattage, it's an amp meter tester, and it will tell you when you plug things in, it'll tell you how much wattage is being used by the devices that you're running. And I've used this to size my system, and I've used this to help other people size their systems. The next important thing to talk about is batteries. Batteries are like your generator's gas tank. They determine how much power you've got, how long you'll be able to run. Your batteries play probably the most important part in determining your capabilities. A lot of people think it's the quantity of solar panels, and that plays a significant role as well. But what really contributes to how much you're capable of doing with your system is how much battery power you have. There are two common types of batteries. There's deep cycle and there's lithium. And each have certain advantages over the other. I'm not going to say what I think is the best battery because I don't think there's a best. It just depends on what your use cases are and what your tolerances are for the strengths and the weaknesses of each of the batteries. Deep cycle are traditionally well suited for the environment that we're in here. They can handle the temperature ranges here, and they're less expensive. But there are some problems with deep cycle as well. They're fairly heavy, and they don't necessarily have a lot of power to run your appliances. For instance, two deep cycles will probably run your air conditioner for less than an hour, not very long. And you'd have to have a lot of deep cycle batteries in order to run your air conditioner all day long. Lithiums have higher energy densities. They usually, in the space that they take up, will have a lot more power. I bought some lithium batteries that have 240 amp hours in them. Traditional deep cycles will have 100 amp hours or 110 amp hours. And my battery is equivalent to almost 4 of those. For those of you doing some math and comparing 240 amp hours to 100 amp hours, that doesn't necessarily work out very well. But another disadvantage to deep cycles is that you can only discharge them about 50% of the way. You can only use 50% of the available power. You can use more power than that, but you end up shortening their life cycle, how long they'll live, if you end up using more than 50% of the power. Whereas lithiums, you're able to use about 80% of their power. And that's another reason why lithiums will provide you more energy in their battery than the deep cycles will. And they'll usually last a lot longer. There are some disadvantages to lithium. Lithium have a much tighter temperature range that they like to run into. They don't like to charge when it's freezing. And when I say freezing, 32 degrees or less. And there's a lot of Colorado days that are typically 32 degrees or less. And lithiums don't like to discharge at higher temperatures, 120, 130 degrees, somewhere in there. And things can get very hot in a boat, particularly on the inside or if it's in an enclosed space. And that can be an issue. Well, lithiums do have something that help manage that. They all have mini computers inside of them called battery management systems, or BMS. And the BMS will prevent the batteries from harming themselves. They'll prevent them from charging when it's cold. They'll prevent them from discharging when it's too hot. And there's other ways of dealing with those situations, ventilation, or you can heat the batteries. Some of the lithium batteries will come with their own heating mechanisms on the inside. So there are ways of addressing those. I went with lithiums because lithiums were the only battery capable of meeting my needs. And again, I'm not claiming that lithiums are any better than deep cycles, just that lithiums had more of the advantages that suited my needs than the traditional deep cycle. Solar panels. These are what most people attribute to a solar system. Whenever you think of a solar system, you think of solar panels and how many solar panels you've got. What solar panels do is they fill up your batteries when the sun shines, and they also provide you power when the sun shines. They'll have to go through an inverter as well. They go to a charge controller, then the batteries, then the inverter. But during sunny days is when they'll provide the power for your system. On cloudy days, maybe less so. It's very important how you place your solar panels when you're positioning them on your environment, in your environment, on your boat or at your home, because if solar panels are shaded, even partially shaded, as a matter of fact, I will show you an example of one solar panel here. This is a Goal Zero portable folding solar panel. If a portion of your solar panel is shaded, not even the totality of it, you're reducing the performance of your solar system dramatically, like down to 15%, not by 15%, but to 15%. If you have something that's holding the solar panel down and it's crossing the top, the same effect. Shade will have that effect. If you're covering it at all, it'll have that effect. And that's because solar panels are much like a hose. You can have a 100-foot long hose. If there's one little kink in that hose, it doesn't matter how much of the rest of that hose is nice and clear and available and wide open, that one little kink is reducing the performance of that hose. Same is true of solar panels. So you need to position the solar panels very carefully so that they're not shaded to get the optimum performance of your solar panels. Another thing about solar panels is that there's an optimum angle for the sun. As we all are aware, during the seasons, the sun in the winter gets lower in the sky, and then in the summertime, the sun gets higher in the sky. My panels that I've placed on my roof are flat. I didn't want to angle them because I was a little concerned about the wind, so they're flat. I know what happens because of this is that in the winter months, they will not produce optimally like they would if the sun were shining directly on them. They will still produce, but at a lesser degree, like 60% efficiency during the worst month of the year, which is December. Solar panels will then act as a gas station for your system. They will fill up your system for you. And a lot of people ask, well, how many solar panels do I need? It depends on how many appliances you're going to be running during the day and how many batteries you have at night. And we're going to get into sizing a system in a little bit here. Finally, you have your charge controller. And I have an example of a smaller charge controller here. This is a Renogy charge controller. And there are other different types of charge controllers. This is a smaller one for maybe 250, 300 watts. There are larger systems that will accommodate larger arrays. I have 3 charge controllers, each meant for 800 watts, and I have 2,400 watts on my system, and those are significantly larger. They sit between the solar panels and the battery, and they keep your batteries charged and healthy. They will monitor your battery, they'll monitor the power coming in from the solar, and they'll do the right things for your batteries depending on the kind of batteries you have. They're usually pretty smart and they can tell what kind of batteries are available for them to charge. Some will monitor the health of your batteries and adjust their behavior, such as some charge controllers will provide equalizing, which is providing a charge that will equalize each cell within a battery in case you have flooded batteries. So the smarter the charge controller, the healthier your batteries will be. There's a lot of different types of charge controllers. The 2 most common ones MPPT, I think it is, and PPT. MPPT is the smarter version. I won't get into the details here of what they do for you, but when you're looking at charge controllers, certainly look at their capabilities or ask me, because I can talk for a whole other presentation just about the charge controllers. Basically, they serve to keep your batteries healthy and use the solar power generated by your solar panels appropriately on your whole system. And then there's a generator. Now, we won't have the same opportunity to run our generators as frequently or as much as we're used to here, because many of our generators aren't water cooled. They don't fit the specifications necessary for what our contract allows. But when we're talking about off-grid systems in general, a generator is always a good component of an off-grid system. And the reason is that you will size your system for the worst case scenario that you're willing to tolerate. But sometimes worse than worst case can occur. And that's where generators come into play, because you can rely on them if you have a long extended period of no sun because of bad weather. Generators are always safe to have as a backup means to provide power when you're not getting the performance of your solar system because of long extensions of bad weather. There are pre-built solar generators that you can buy, and they combine 3 of the components that we just discussed. A solar generator will combine the battery, the inverter, and the charge controller all in one single unit, and it can be charged either from traditional power or from your solar panels. And I've got 2 right here that I'll show you. This one is an EngineStar, and it'll run small appliances. It won't run anything significant, but it is portable. It can be charged via solar as well. It has its own battery. This one has about 250 usable watts. And it'll convert. It has its own inverter that'll do about 300 watts of inverted power. So it'll run your small things like lights, TV, computer. I ran my internet on this before I got my larger solar system. And this is a pretty good and inexpensive system. This was about $179. Mike Perini bought a Yeti 500. The Yeti 500 is a more robust system. It has more power available to it and can invert more. Also charged either via the wall or through solar. And he used this to power his internet while he wasn't at the boat, and some other small appliances while he was at the boat. And we'll talk more about that when I get into some of the solar use cases. There are other solar generators that you can buy, and they are very significant in what they're capable of doing. So you can spend a lot of money on solar generators that will provide more power, but you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can spend a little bit of money and get convenient solar generators that are capable of running your smaller load appliances, and you can use some of your smaller conveniences that you're used to. Also, there are a variety of other accessories that are available, and I'm going to show you on screen some of these. This is a Goal Zero set of speakers that can be charged via solar, and you can port this around and play your music. Lights, such as this particular LED light here, solar panel, and the lights. And on our 400 deck, we all chipped in and bought a bunch of these and put these on the dock. And what these allowed us to do is at night, they would automatically come on. And even though we don't have marina power and we don't have marina lighting, we're able to see well enough to know when we might stub our toe or when we're going to fall off the dock. And of course, we don't want to do that. So these were inexpensive. These were about $50 for a box of 10. And these allowed us to provide lighting in the evening along our dock so that we could safely walk around. There are other different styles of lights, such as this one, little solar panel here. And it'll pop up and become its own little lamp. And this can be charged in the sun during the day, and then on the inside of your boat, provide a little bit of light at night, and not necessarily enough light to be able to brighten the entire room, but certainly enough to where you'll be able to see where you're going and know if you're going to hit something and stub your toe. Other different appliances. This one has its own little solar panel as well, and this is both a floodlight and a spotlight and some blinking red emergency lights as well. So there's lots of little conveniences that can be found. This is another Goal Zero light. You won't be able to see that very well on the recording, but this also can be charged, provides power, has its own USB port so that it can charge your phone or your other USB devices. Pretty good device here. Another one, this is a solar fan. This little solar panel here will operate and run this fan when the sun is shining. This will circulate the air. Now, even if you don't have enough solar to run your air conditioner, this could be of great assistance because just circulating the air helps keep it cool. It's stagnant air that's being baked by the sun that really produces a lot of heat. And just keeping the air moving will reduce the temperature of the air dramatically. So just this little device is capable of providing a decent and comfortable amount of cooling for a lot of people. Sizing your system. Well, it depends on what you want to be able to do with your system, and it involves a lot of math. A lot of people, they don't care for math. They don't want to crunch numbers. Now, I love math. I crunch numbers entirely for my system, but a lot of people don't like to do that. They're not comfortable working with all those numbers. I'm going to cover the concepts for you on how to size your system, but I'm going to do it in a mathless way. And hopefully it'll help you in determining how much solar you need. The first thing is your solar panels. You want to meet your daytime energy needs. So I don't know what your needs are. I don't know how much power you use, but let's presume you purchase enough solar to meet your daytime energy needs. You get solar and you're able to power the things that you do during the day. One minor flaw with this: the sun doesn't shine 24/7. It sets. You come to nighttime and your solar panels aren't generating anymore because there's no more sun. How do you solve this? Well, you add a battery, and the battery gives you a means of running your appliances, running your conveniences at night. And that's a great system. So you've got your solar that provides the daytime power, and you've got your battery that provides the nighttime power. One minor flaw is that you only have enough solar to meet your daytime energy needs. You're not generating any excess to charge the battery that you used the prior night. How we solve this is we add some extra solar panels so that you're generating enough to meet your daytime needs and you're generating extra to charge the batteries. And this is pretty much the perfect system for the perfect weather, and maybe the perfect system for boaters, because a lot of boaters will come down only in good weather. So you'll come down for a weekend, good weather, you'll be able to use your appliances during the day, use your power during the day, and then charge up your batteries so that your batteries will have enough for the night. And every day and every night, repeat, rinse, you've got all your energy needs met. But there is one minor flaw with that, and that's that the weather isn't always perfect. In that case, what you do is you add some additional batteries, and you decide how many batteries do you need in order to meet your power needs in case the weather isn't good. So you'll add some so that you can use for additional days. You'll be able to use your appliances during the day and during the night, depending on how many batteries you add. But there is one minor flaw with that. You have enough solar to meet your daytime needs. You have enough solar to charge one night's of usage, but not enough to charge the extra batteries in case you ended up having to dip into those because of poor weather. So you end up adding more panels. And this is the typical off-grid system that you have, is you decide how many days of no sun you want to be able to support. I chose 3 nights and 2 days on my system and 2.5 days of recovery. And our usage is about 5,000 watts a day. So I have at least 12,500 available watts, which will support 3 nights and 2 days of power and about 2.5 days of recovery with 24 100-watt panels up on top. And again, I sized it knowing that my flat solar panels weren't necessarily going to be as efficient. And I have 6 angled solar panels on the front of the boat, and those will produce better in the wintertime. They may not produce as well in the summertime, but I've got a little bit of mix there. And as I said, our system can support 3 days or 3 nights and 2 days of continuous usage with no sun, and then 2.5 days of recovery. That is how you size an off-grid system. No matter who you are, no matter what your use case is, if you're boating or not, this is how you do it. And the question becomes, well, how much power am I using? And I referred earlier to that device, which basically helped me determine all the watts that I were using. And I determined that my wife and I comfortably used about 5,000 watts a day. And I've sized my system accordingly. Some use cases that I thought would be appropriate for the marina, and these aren't necessarily the only use cases that people might think of, and they're not exclusive. You don't necessarily fit just into one bucket or the other. These can overlap. One, just keeping the batteries charged. This presumes that there's no significant charge on your battery whatsoever. You don't have a lot of systems running when you're not there. Your battery is fairly idle. And in that case, you don't need much. Now, I don't know how much power your system is drawing, so I can't tell you definitively what size solar panel you need. Typically, if your battery isn't being used, a 20 watt, a 30 watt, either of those would be more than sufficient. But because I don't know what your power needs or your power usages are when you're not here, I'm recommending at least 100 watts. That's a bit of overkill, but that should be sufficient for everybody who is just interested in keeping their batteries charged. 2 examples of individuals who have done something like this, Bob Hahn and Rick Atkins. They put on 200 watts on their boat specifically to keep their batteries charged. Now, this is way overkill, but it does keep the batteries charged. 100 watts probably would have been sufficient for them. Rick Atkins, his system is using and replacing about 30 watts only a day. So he has very minimal draw on his battery, whereas Bob Hahn seems to be using about 130 watts a day that he gets replaced. And 200 watts of solar is more than sufficient to meet both those needs. Generally speaking, when you have a solar system, like a 100-watt panel, how many watts you get out of that during a full sunny day, there is a number that can fluctuate during the time of year. Generally, the number is 5. You take the number of watts your solar panel is, in my example, 100 watts, you multiply it by 5. 500 watts is what you can expect to generate from that solar panel during an entire bright, typical sunny day. The reason it's 5 is because when the sun comes up, it's not shining full on the panel. Then you get to your noon hours and it's shining brightly on the panels. And then the sun starts going down and it's not at an optimal angle. That number represents the full total sun hours you can get expected from a full sunny day. So Bob Hahn and Rick Atkins, they're producing about 1,000 watts of usable power a day, but they're only needing to replace in one case 30 watts, and in another case 130 watts. So their system is a little bit oversized for just keeping the batteries charged. But that means that when they're down here and using their 12-volt systems, that they're still capable of using a lot of their 12 volts comfortably without worrying, because that power is going to be replaced by the solar panels. The next use case is you're occasionally running some small appliances, such as a TV, internet, small stereo, or lights. Coffee pot would require a larger inverter and more batteries than this particular system. So this particular system would be running off of your batteries. You have maybe 200 watts minimum, and you have an inverter of 1,000 watts or less. And this will run all of your small stuff comfortably. You'll be able to run your internet. You'll be able to run a small stereo. A lot of people like their music here and have very large systems. So you'll need a larger solar system if you want to run a very large stereo system. And your TV. A lot of people were using their systems to run the internet as well. An example of this is the Gutierrez, Chalo and Barbara. They bought one of these and they liked it so much they ended up buying a second one of these. And they bought 2 folding solar panels that they used to charge up their solar generators. And they were able to run their TV and their lights on this device. Perfect example of just being able to run some of your smaller conveniences. Another use case is solar panel for the night. As we discussed, solar generates during the day, but in the evening hours, you're not getting any solar power. In that case, what you're doing is you're buying enough batteries to be able to support your nighttime usage. You would be able to run your TV, your internet, your stereo, your lights, maybe even a small blanket heater, maybe even a fan. You'd want a couple of extra batteries because you don't want to dip too deep into your batteries, and enough solar and a charge controller to charge those up, or a solar generator, and then a sufficient inverter to run those. 1,000 watts is more than enough for these smaller appliances. A 500-watt inverter also would be sufficient for that. You wouldn't be able to run any large appliances, but your smaller appliances you would be able to run. And with enough battery in the evening, you'll be able to do that in the evening and have your solar panels recharge the next day. Mike Perini is an example of this use case. He wanted to power his internet, and so he bought his system, and he had full-time access to his internet and his cameras 24/7. No matter where he was able to access it. He was running his system all night long, all day long, 24/7. I did the same thing, and I spent thousands of dollars on my system so that I'm able to access my cameras and my internet and see what's going on with my boat every day, no matter where I'm at on the planet. As long as I have internet, I can check on it. He only spent $750 for his system, and he has full-time access to his cameras and his internet. The main point here is that you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to have a usable solar system that'll help you meet your needs. I ended up sizing for if we were going to be living on this boat full-time, which we're not going to be. He sized his system appropriate to his needs. He wanted to be able to access his cameras. He wanted to be able to then run a little blanket heater in the evening, and he didn't have to spend that much money to support his needs. The next one is the weekender. This is where you're coming down and you want to use full-time power over the weekend provided by solar, not necessarily having to run the generator. And then your solar panels are recharging all the batteries that you ended up using, all that power you used throughout the week. This is typically maybe an 800-watt system, and that's the example that I've got is Rich Guy. He has 800 watts of solar on his boat. We're still in progress of putting that system together, but once complete, he will be able to turn on the power if he wants to when he comes down and have power for the entire weekend, and then turn off that power from the solar and have the batteries recharge throughout the week. And he's going to have probably about 2 500 amp hour batteries and a 3,000 watt inverter so that he can run a couple major appliances simultaneously. You don't necessarily need that much. A 2,000 watt inverter would be sufficient if you're disciplined in only one large item per at any one time. And then my use case, and I went overboard, full-time power. This is the most sophisticated system. It is a fully off-the-grid system, and we're capable of living on our boat should we need to or should we want to, other than, state regulations and such. But in case of zombie apocalypse, this boat is the place to be. It will support full-time power 24/7. We can run all of our appliances. We can even run our air conditioner during the day when we know that our batteries are charged and fully topped off. We're generating enough solar to support running our air conditioner. I haven't budgeted for the air conditioner, so in case there's cloudy days, then we wouldn't be able to do that. We would end up dipping into a budget of power that I haven't allocated all that power for. But we're pretty much expecting we won't need to run the air conditioner when it's cloudy anyways, only when it's sunny and hot, when solar's producing its best and when the batteries are fully charged. So that will work out really well. This requires careful planning in order to size your system appropriately. You can throw a lot at it and maybe overspend and oversize, or you can spend just a little bit but undersize your system. And that's why you need to really carefully plan your system if you're planning on full-time power. I don't know that there's anybody else on the marina who's going to go to the same extent that I went to provide full-time power, but my system is 6 240 amp hour batteries for a total of 1440 amp hours. That provides me an available usable watts of 13,271 watts. And that's including all of the inefficiencies that occur while the power is being converted and such. And this allows us to run for 3 nights and 2 days comfortably. We don't have to worry about using it. We don't have to think, oh, do I have enough power to run my microwave? Do I have enough power to run the coffee pot? No, we do. And as long as we don't exceed 3 days or 3 nights and 2 days of no sun, we're in pretty good shape. I will produce another video separate from this one that'll go through and show the components of our system, the solar system that I've got, and you can get an idea of what I put together. In that, you will see some of the pluses and some of the minuses of my system. I'm just going to be honest and share with you, including the minuses of my system. And the reason that I wanted to share that with you is I'm not here to make money. I'm not here offering my services to install systems on your boat. In fact, I'm pretty sure you don't want me installing on your boat. You see the wires on my system, you'll have an understanding why, but I am not offering professional services. I will consult with you on what your needs are, and I'll make some recommendations, but I'm not going to be the individual to go ahead and install on your system. Thank you very much for this time, and look forward to that video of a tour of my boat. Thank you very much.